The quiet child who became an overthinker. Have you ever noticed that some people seem calm on the outside, but inside, they are constantly fighting with their own thoughts? They replay conversations. They predict rejection before it happens. They notice tiny changes in tone, facial expression, and text timing. And even when nothing is actually wrong, their mind still refuses to relax. That is because overthinking is not always just a habit. Sometimes, it is a survival pattern. And if you have lived like this for a long time, you probably do not even remember when it started. It may feel like this is simply your personality, like you were born this way. But usually, it did not begin with overthinking. It began with uncertainty. Maybe you grew up in a house where emotions were confusing. Some days, love was warm. Other days, it was cold. Some days, you were praised for being quiet, easy, and obedient. Other days, your feelings were ignored, mocked, or treated like a problem. So you learned something very important early in life. You learned that being calm was safer than being honest. You learned that saying less could protect you. You learned that watching other people carefully might help you avoid conflict. And without realizing it, your mind became a scanner. A scanner for danger. A scanner for rejection. A scanner for signs that someone was about to change, leave, or get upset. That is how many overthinkers are made. Not from weakness. Not from drama. But from emotional unpredictability. A child who grows up in emotional chaos often becomes an adult who cannot trust peace. Because peace feels unfamiliar. When life is quiet, their mind does not rest. It starts creating problems just to stay prepared. It thinks, if I expect the worst, maybe I can avoid getting hurt. But that strategy has a cost. It makes you tired all the time. It makes simple relationships feel heavy. It turns small delays into big fears. It makes a two-word reply feel like a warning. And worst of all, it slowly teaches you to distrust yourself. You stop asking, what do I feel? And you start asking, what did I do wrong? That question can quietly control your whole life. You overanalyze the tone of a message. You remember every awkward pause. You keep wondering whether people are secretly upset with you. You apologize too quickly. You explain yourself too much. You try to be easier to love. And from the outside, people may call you sensitive, careful, thoughtful, or even intelligent. But inside, it feels exhausting. Because overthinking is not just thinking too much. It is fear wearing a thinking mask. Pause for a moment and ask yourself something honest. When was the last time you felt completely safe being yourself around people? Not impressive, not perfect, just yourself. For many overthinkers, the answer is hard to find. Because somewhere along the way, they learned that being fully seen could be dangerous. Maybe when you cried, someone told you to stop. Maybe when you spoke up, you were told you were too much. Maybe when you needed comfort, you were told to be strong. Maybe your home had rules, but no emotional warmth. Maybe no one hit you, yelled every day, or caused obvious damage. But the emotional atmosphere still taught you to shrink. And shrinking became normal. You became the child who stayed quiet. The child who watched before speaking. The child who tried not to upset anyone. The child who noticed everything but said very little. That child often grows into the adult who seems fine on the outside but is constantly exhausted inside. Because the body remembers what the mind tries to ignore. Even years later, your nervous system may still behave like you are in danger. A late text does not feel like a late text. It feels like abandonment. A serious face does not feel like a serious face. It feels like a coming argument. A small mistake does not feel small. It feels like proof that you are not good enough. And the tragic part is that other people may never understand why you react so strongly. They only see the final emotion. They do not see the old wound underneath it. But here is something important. Your mind is not broken. It is trying to protect you with tools that were useful once, but are hurting you now. That is why healing an overthinking mind is not about forcing yourself to just stop thinking. You cannot shame a nervous system into peace. You cannot bully an old wound into healing. You have to understand the deeper pattern. Overthinking usually grows where there was emotional inconsistency. A child who never knew what version of love they would get starts becoming hyper-aware. They learn to read faces before words. They learn to predict moods before people speak. They learn to stay ready. And that readiness becomes personality. So as an adult, they look thoughtful, careful, sensitive, and intelligent. But under all of that, there is often one silent fear. If I do not keep checking, I will get hurt. That is why overthinkers struggle to let go. They do not trust silence. They do not trust distance. They do not trust unclear situations. They want certainty, because uncertainty once felt unsafe. This is also why overthinkers are often deeply empathetic. They notice pain quickly. They understand hidden emotions. They can sense tension in a room before anyone says a word. But when that strength is built on fear, it becomes a prison. You start using your gift of sensitivity against yourself. You feel what others feel. You imagine what they may think. You interpret what they might mean. And then you punish yourself for not knowing for sure. That is a painful cycle. And the more you do it, the more tired you become. You may even begin to feel guilty for needing reassurance. You may feel embarrassed for caring too much. You may think you are too dependent, too emotional, too complicated. But really, you are someone whose mind learned to survive by staying alert. That is not a character flaw. And once you understand that, something powerful begins to change. Because now you can stop treating every anxious thought like truth. You can pause before reacting. You can ask, is this happening now, or does this feeling belong to an older memory? That question matters more than people realize. Because not every fear is about the present. Sometimes the body is reacting to the past, even when the moment in front of you is safe. That is why healing often feels strange at first. When you are used to chaos, peace can feel suspicious. When you are used to guessing, clarity can feel uncomfortable. When you are used to earning love, steady love can feel unreal. But those uncomfortable feelings do not mean healing is wrong. They mean healing is new. And new feels unfamiliar before it feels safe. So what do you do if you are this kind of person? You slow down your reactions. You stop assuming the worst immediately. You give yourself a few extra seconds before answering that message. You notice when your mind starts building a story with no evidence. You remind yourself that not every silence is rejection. Not every mistake is disaster. Not every mood change is about you. And most importantly, you begin speaking to yourself differently. Instead of saying, "Why am I like this?" try saying, "What happened to me that made me this alert?" That one shift can change everything. Because it moves you from shame to understanding. And understanding is where healing starts. You were never meant to live with your heart clenched all the time. You were never meant to scan every face like a warning sign. You were never meant to carry childhood fear into every adult connection. You were meant to feel safe enough to breathe. So if your mind has been loud for years, do not judge it too quickly. It may have spent a long time trying to protect you. Now it is your turn to protect it with gentleness instead of fear. And maybe that is where healing begins. Not when your thoughts become silent, but when they finally stop feeling dangerous.